that there's no free lunch. It's worse with dinner. So I can't just come here and have dinner for free. I've got to sweat for the dinner that I've had and great wine that I've just enjoyed. So I'm required to pay for it. So in paying for it, I have to answer all these difficult questions. And I really want to thank Old Mutual, Nedbank, for inviting us to this competition. We're very, very grateful. And I must also apologize on behalf of the minister who could not come tonight. So I'm representing him. So all the wrong and the right things that I'll be saying, he takes full responsibility. The Governor of the Reserve Bank, Lisisha Khanyago, Edward Kisweta, the Commissioner of SARS. I've seen the BASA CEO, Kaz Kadovia, who's been in the financial sector since I've been a little bit active in the financial sector. And I was advised today that it was his last attendance of the budget speech in his capacity as CEO of BASA. So if you see him next time here, he'll be coming in another capacity. The president of PSA, Lufuno Mulaudzi, Leila Fori, the CEO of the JSE, Maria Ramos, who's known to many of us, who's currently part of the Presidential Investment Envoy, Ian Williamson, the acting CEO of the Old Mutual Limited, Mike Brown, the CEO of Nedbank, who is also the chairman of BASA, Trevor Manuel, who does not need any introduction. All of you know him very well, but is currently the chairman of Old Mutual Limited. Chairman of Nedbank, Vasinaidu, the Director General of National Treasury, Dondom Hochane and his team. I've seen a couple of DDGs, Momo, Ian, Mampo, Public Finance, very difficult, or one of the difficult. We always say to them, thanks for the technical advice, because they really do give us technical advice, sound technical advice. But what is technically feasible is not always politically feasible. So sometimes you get a sense that they could just strangle you. How can you do this? Say, listen here, Mampo, it's politics. I've seen the Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank, it's Fundi. And if I've left anyone, may I say all protocol observed. This budget speech, did I say budget speech? Budget speech competition. I need to check if you are listening attentively. It's very important for the building of future leadership of this country. I've looked at the synopsis, the summary of what these young people, young students write about. It's very clear to me that they really write about very complex questions facing South Africa, and they do have very good professors, because the kind of questions that they ask and some of the arguments that they present, they are quite insightful, very thorough. So Professor Dirk Scholz, I've seen you somewhere, Professor of Economics at University of Pretoria. I might have missed some of the academics who are here. It really shows that you are producing good students who are preoccupied with understanding how the world works and how to change it through policy prescription, not just rhetoric. And how I wish some of these students could be in Parliament to present some of those complex and very sound economic and political arguments, ranging from economic growth, investment, and probing into why the economy is growing so slowly and what we can do to grow our economy. And one of the some of these questions that you have posed, I'm not alone, I'm going to ask the DG of National Treasury, Dondo, to also help me in providing those complex and difficult questions that you've basically posed. But one of the questions that is asked by Matifanza Bengoza from the University of Pretoria is, shouldn't it be a priority to reduce our growing public debt as a matter of agency, as opposed to establishing the sovereign wealth fund, state bank? Public debt should be your priority. So implicit in this question is also some kind of advice and policy prescription that no, leave almost everything, just focus on the public debt. And indeed, the public debt, it's a huge problem we're facing as South Africa. And the debt now is 3.5 trillion. And we're spending almost about 256 billion to service this debt. So essentially was taking money that is supposed to go to education, health, infrastructure to service the debt, because we keep on increasing our debt. This is a very important question. And my answer to it is as follows. For you to deal with the public debt, you've got to grow the economy. Because in growing the economy simply means that you are encouraging business people to invest, and as they invest, they employ people, they buy machinery and other business activities, and in that way, you've got a very good tax base to generate enough revenue, not just to deal with the debt, but also to invest in growth enhancing activities, infrastructure, and providing social services. So our preoccupation as government is that in order to address the debt, you've got to seriously deal with the structural constraints of our economy. And we've identified a number of constraints which I will not go through. It's dinner tonight. we've produced a document which identifies a number of interventions that we need to undertake in order to deal with some of those structural constraints in our economy, starting from the network industries, electricity, telecommunications, logistics. So it's important for us, there's no way in which we can deal with the public debt if we don't seriously look at the structural reforms, which are a binding constraint for the growth of our economy. And I think the Minister has laid out a number of interventions that we need to undertake, which I will not bore with you with tonight, on the things that we basically need to do, including on electricity, the things that we're basically doing insofar as that's concerned, including institutionally stabilizing ESCOM. We've appointed a CEO who's also seized with making sure that electricity supply, operational inefficiencies that are there in ESCOM power stations, we deal with them decisively, because one of the risks for our economic growth, it is indeed the supply of electricity. The first quarter growth was negatively impacted because of our poor supply and consistent supply of electricity. Our ports not working very well. I've been speaking to farmers here in the Western Cape, and they say when it's too windy, our ports here, the cargoes can't move, and that has a huge impact insofar as their export performance is concerned. So network industries are very important for us to decisively intervene and deal with them as part and parcel of making sure that we grow our economy. And as we grow our economy, we lay a better tax base for us to generate enough revenue for the state to do the things that it has to do. So I won't bore you with the details of what we basically suggested, including the reimagined industrial policy that we've put together in order to improve the contribution of the manufacturing industry to its contribution to the GDP composition. Now, in what way is the State Bank helping us towards this agenda of trying to grow our economy? I mean, firstly, we need to recognize that we already have, if you like, state banks of some sort. Post Bank, one of them, the Itala, which is a provincial bank in KZN, which has been operating for many years on the basis of requesting exemption from the Reserve Bank for it to operate. So this gives us an opportunity, the whole thing about the State Bank, it gives us an opportunity to basically consolidate many of these entities that are not only a burden to our fiscus, but, okay, we said everything that we say here. There's no media. Some of these entities at the provincial level, they're basically used as conduit for patronage politics. And this gives us an opportunity, this State Bank thing, gives us an opportunity to rein in and make sure that we consolidate and have proper governance on some of the entities that we basically have. And of course, as the Minister indicated, this bank will have to comply with the Banks Act. So by the time we go to the governor, we must make sure that we meet all the requirements of the Banks Act. And we also see this as an opportunity to cover the poor people in the countryside. Well, the post office is trying to do that, but we also want to make sure that we put proper governance structures within this bank, and the capital structure is also appropriate. The capital adequate ratios are balanced and all that. So we see this as an opportunity not just to close, to rationalize and make sure that we've streamlined all the entities that look like some kind of a bank, and through that we're hoping that we'll be able to not only save certain costs which are a huge burden. To go back to Matifaza's question about how do we reduce the, shouldn't we be concerned about the public debt? This that we are doing, which includes the public bank, state bank, to what extent is it helping us to deal with reducing our growing public debt as a matter of urgency? We're not blind to the third world experience of how state banks have been used to either distort the market, but also as cash cows, as war chests for political elites in different states. So we're not very blind to that, and when corruption gets discovered in some of these state banks, the people who argue or who fight against those who are in charge of that state bank in that particular period or electoral cycle, they say, no, we're going to deal with corruption. And they go in and do the very same thing that the previous ones have been doing. And the ones who know there's corruption, yeah, let's fight these guys. So we're not blind to the dangers of corruption, rent-seeking, and all that. We're fully aware of some of these risks associated with the state bank. And by the way, the state bank is different from VBS. Yes, a lot of politicians, they were huge beneficiaries of the VBS, to the extent that in the public business, people tended to confuse this VBS. They even thought that the VBS is a state bank. It is not. It's a mutual bank. But the experience of the VBS and other experiences in the world, we're not blind to those experiences. So the state bank is also an attempt to increase financial inclusion. Okay, so Big Tamba, I hope I've answered your question about the state bank. It may not be adequate, and your continuous critical support and look at what we're doing will be very valuable. And this platform is a great platform for us as government to identify our blind spots. So we should also use you as a mirror at which we look at ourselves and decide and get guidance on whether the things that we're doing are really helping us to grow the economy, whether they help us to deal with the fundamental question that Matifaza asked about the reduction of the public debt. Now, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, so sovereign wealth funds are largely used to save money for rainy days. China, Singapore, in a number of countries, they do have the Sovereign Wealth Fund. And the question is, where will the money come from, given the amount of debt and the challenges that we basically have? We going forward, we're looking at moments at which, when we've got good savings, either from windfall tax on either mining royalties, when there's commodity booms like we had, I think 2003, 4. You could use that boom to basically save for the rainy season. We'll be auctioning spectrum. Some of that money we can put it in the sovereign wealth fund. But what is also very critical is the governance of this sovereign wealth fund. How will that money be withdrawn? How would it be utilized? And as National Treasury, will be working on the governance structure for this sovereign wealth fund. And we're hoping that we can utilize it to fund growth enhancing activities. We're not blind again to possibilities of capturing by ourselves, political elites, repurposing the fund. We're not blind to that. And I'll come back to the importance of the civil society in economic growth, including the role of business. I'll come back to that as an important, that you can create all sorts of institutions which are well intended, but if you don't have an active civil society, including business, these entities can be repurposed for the benefit of the few. The intentions may be good, but as we all know, institutions on their own, they are not enough to realize those intentions. There's forces at play, there's people at play who may repurpose them and use them for other agendas. DG, I'll leave SAA for you. All I will do, I will make a broad statement insofar as our SOEs are concerned. Many of our SOEs are not able to meet their financial obligations. Their cost structures are generating a lot of problems for us insofar as their ability to generate revenue. So the cost of many of these companies are very high, the revenue is very low, and as a result, we need to keep on bailing them out. And we've said to many of them that they need to look at their cost structure, and we're very happy with Eskom. They are moving very fast in looking at the cost structure of Eskom, ranging from coal. We know the Medupi problems. SAA, it's another headache that we've had, or that we continuously have. And we've said that it's important for us to look at SAA. But remember, part of this 16 billion that we've put in place, we've said that to lenders, that if something goes wrong with Eskom, we'll come in and pay. So we've got an obligation as government to pay the debt that SAA has basically generated. So some of them are related to the restructuring costs, which we're still not fully certain on how much in full the option that we've adopted. Because remember, there were 3 options that the business rescue practitioners presented to us. It was liquidation, and as National Treasury, we preferred liquidation. But the balance of power, which is politics, determined the outcome. And the outcome was that, final outcome was that you need a restructured SA, which means that you need to restructure the business model, you need to look at the cost structure, and part of looking at the business model of SAA. It's how they need to run that business, because many of the airlines, in doing their business model, is very integrated with the hospitality industry. If you book a flight, it's linked to the hotel that you are booking, it's linked to all sort of activities in the value chain. And if you look at them, the aircrafts are losing money, but there's cross-subsidization internally in the way in which they've put together their business model, which is quite integrated with other aspects of the hospitality industry. But DG will say more about this. All I can say is that many of these business models are not sustainable, and it's not fair to South Africans to bear the brunt, the crisis of this, the inefficiencies of many of these SOEs. Because in the final analysis, we are taking 16 billion from infrastructure, from you guys in education, health, and you say you're going to bail out these SOEs. ESCOM, it's too big to fail, as we always say. But SAA, there's no market failure there. Why do you keep on bailing it? To understand this, the technical economic arguments make a lot of sense, but politics around it, it's something else. It doesn't mean that you don't need airlines. Airlines are important, transporting business people from point A to B to go and do their businesses. Question is whether the state should be an active participant in the form of SAA in this regard. So that's where we are. But DG will say more about this. Maybe you may. The last point I want to say before I sit down, I hope I've answered all the questions. If they don't make sense, well, possible political answers. Now, I spoke about the institutions, that establishing institutions, economic institutions, whether regulatory or some of them, you establish them to deal with the market failures, including the criminal justice system. Institutions are important. Douglas North has written a lot of literature on the importance of institutions in economic growth, the relationship between institutions and economic growth. But what he misses, in my view, is the role of the civil society. And if there's anything that we've got to learn from the last 9 years, or maybe the last 5 years of the Zuma administration, President Zuma's administration, is that if you don't have an active civil society, institutions can be captured, can be repurposed to advance certain agendas that are not helping South Africans, that are not growth enhancing. You just have to listen to what is coming out from the Masondo Commission. The Nugent Commission, it revealed a lot of things, how SARS, thanks to the Commissioner, Edward, who's really trying his best to rebuild SARS in order for it to serve its real purpose on why it was established. He's doing his best to make sure that, okay, I nearly said some of you who are dodging tax, but I hope there's none of you who's running away from paying what is due to Caesar. He's doing this, but if it wasn't for the active citizenship, civil society, including business, Save South Africa and all that, I'm not so sure where would these institutions be. In Africa, there's a correlation between active civil society, and the robustness of the institution, but also economic growth. In many parts of our continent, Africa, not just Africa, Latin America, where you don't have an active civil society, the elites and civil society include the media and everyone who make sure that we are held accountable as people who have to run these institutions. The tendency is, or the pattern, is that those who are in charge of these institutions, they are self-interested, they use those institutions for their own personal gains. Take Mobutu Sese Seko in Zaire as an example. There was no active civil society. Well, he managed to obliterate it, including, he was installed through killing Patrice Lumumba. Well, I can't predict what Patrice Lumumba would have done. I don't know. I'm learning from some of our veterans of the movement. You even wonder why they do the things that they do. Because the test of power on whether you do the right things when you have power is when you are in power. But before you get into the power, you can say all sorts of things, but the test is when you've got that power. Then that's when we'll see whether you're exercising power accordingly. So Zaire, civil society was very weak, destroyed, obliterated, and Mobutu Sese Seko, he turned the state as his own personal property. He would steal money, and when government was in trouble, was in debt, he would say, no, I can borrow this government money, the money that he stole, and further charge with interest. That was Mobutu Sese Seko, and the civil society was very weak. And you could see some of the patterns in our democracy in the last few years. But because many of you stood up, you were active in the civil society, including marching, media exposing the rot that was going on, it was important for us to fight against state capture. I wouldn't say that, now I'm talking politics. And politics, we should not think about politics as party politics, that you've got to belong to a political party in order to be political. Because politics is about power, and that power can be used for good, for the benefit of everyone. That power can be used for growth-enhancing activities, for the benefit of all. So politics is not inherently something, bad. Even in churches, there's politics there. Who does what? Who holds the pulpit? It's political decisions that are taken. Corporate board is a political. It has to take decisions in the interest of the shareholders and all that. So politics is not just party political activities. But politics, power can be utilized differently. And for that reason, we've been so united. Many of us were concerned about what was going on in the last 5 years. Well, some of us saw the roots. Okay, some of you saw the roots in as early as 2007. Some of us were too late, unfortunately, to see the dangers coming our way. But the point I want to make, which is my parting shot, is that we've had a very good coalition fighting state capture. The question is whether do we have a economic growth coalition, private sector, labor, the state, because we are indeed in trouble, and if we don't put this economy on a different growth trajectory, we are in trouble, and we're looking forward to your ideas as students, as academics, as business people, to come up with a clear growth agenda and mobilize around it in the same way as we mobilize to make sure that South Africa's institutions are not captured in the manner that benefit a few family and a few political elites. I leave that task to you. Thank you.
Deputy Minister, thank you so much for that.